Welcome back, guys. It's been a while since my last video, but Longines just redesigned my favorite watch, so I had to get it and compare it. And after wearing the previous HydroConquest for years, I think they got almost everything right, except for one design decision that I genuinely think made the watch a bit worse. Some of the changes are exactly what HydroConquest owners have been asking for. Others I'm not so sure about. Now, if you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you already know how much I love the HydroConquest. It's not only one of my favorite watches in my collection, but also the one that I've worn, I think, more than any other one. And whenever someone asks me what luxury watch to buy around the $2,000 mark, this is usually the first recommendation that comes to mind. I've lived with this watch for years, so I guess that makes me somewhat of a HydroConquest specialist. Or at least that's what I'll keep telling myself. So with that being said, I'm gonna put the old and the new side by side to answer one simple question. Did Longines actually improve the HydroConquest, or did they just simply change it? Let's start with the biggest improvement, because it's immediately obvious the moment you pick up this new watch. The overall finish is simply on another level. Yes, the ceramic bezel is an obvious upgrade over the old aluminum insert. It simply just looks richer, reflects light better, and it's going to stay looking new for years thanks to its superior scratch resistance. But honestly, after 5 minutes you stop thinking about the material, and what you notice every single day is the bezel itself. Just listen to this. Compared to the old one, the clicks are tighter, more precise, and much more satisfying than the one on the previous generation. And then there's the grip. One thing that always annoyed me about the HydroConquest was that Longines decided to leave parts of the bezel completely smooth. To this day, I have absolutely no idea why anyone thought this was a good idea on a dive watch. Thankfully, that's also gone now. The new bezel has aggressive knurling all the way around, making it far easier to grip, especially with wet hands. Another improvement that I don't hear many people talking about is the crown guards. On the older model, there were times when unscrewing the crown, especially if you have larger fingers, was surprisingly awkward and difficult. The new crown guards are slimmer, better integrated, and simply make the watch easier to use. It's a small change, but it's exactly the kind of refinement you appreciate after living with this watch for years. And now for my favorite upgrade is definitely the bracelet. The first thing you'll notice is that it finally tapers, and on a relatively large sports watch like this, that makes a bigger difference than you think. The watch simply feels better balanced on the wrist because of it. Longines also got rid of the polished center links. Those polished links look fantastic for about 5 minutes, and then they become absolute scratch magnets. So the fully brushed bracelet not only looks more premium, but also feels much more appropriate for a proper dive watch. And then we get to the clasp. Longines absolutely nailed this one. Everything feels beautifully machined and incredibly solid, but the real star of the show is the on-the-fly micro adjustment. This is one of those features you don't fully appreciate until you've lived with it. You know how your wrist changes sizes throughout the day, and being able to adjust it instantly without tools completely changes the ownership experience. Honestly, this feels like a bracelet you'd expect on a watch costing twice as much. Now here's something that genuinely surprised me. Looking purely at the specifications, I expected the difference between a 41mm and a 42mm case to be almost impossible to notice. But on the wrist, it actually feels like a noticeably larger watch. I think a lot of that comes down to the bezel overhang, which gives the watch a bigger visual presence. For that reason alone, I think a lot of people should seriously consider the 39mm version. That being said though, the bracelet taper does a fantastic job of balancing everything out. So despite looking larger, it actually wears better than the previous generation. Longines also reduced the thickness from 11.9mm to 11.7mm. Will you notice the 0.2 of a millimeter? Probably not, because I think the previous HydroConquest was already an incredibly comfortable watch. So if you're looking for a bold, contemporary sports watch that still feels refined enough to wear every day, the new HydroConquest absolutely delivers. Now, remember that one thing I said at the beginning that I think Longines actually made worse? This is it. And if you read the comments online, almost everyone agrees that the new dial is an improvement, and honestly, I completely understand why. The applied indices are beautifully finished, the lume is significantly better. Overall, the dial feels cleaner and more sophisticated, but I actually somehow still prefer the old one. Those oversized Arabic numerals give the HydroConquest a personality that no other dive watch really had. You could spot one from across the room. Now, without them, the watch starts looking like, well, almost every other luxury dive watch. In fact, Longines now has the print HydroConquest on the dial. Maybe that's because otherwise you might mistake it for something else, and to me that says quite a lot. Then there's the two dots at 6 and 9 o'clock. I can't quite explain why, but they still look slightly out of place. Maybe it's because we're used to seeing dots and markers arranged differently, or maybe it's because the single dot at 9 simply doesn't balance the rectangular date window at 3. Either way, it's not a bad looking dial, far from it. I just think it lost a little bit of character that made the HydroConquest instantly recognizable. So that's why for me this is kind of a downgrade rather than an upgrade. Inside, nothing revolutionary has changed. You're still getting the excellent L888 movement with a 72-hour power reserve, accuracy that has been outstanding in my experience, and now the welcome addition of a silicone hairspring. That means better resistance to magnetic fields while still meeting ISO 764 standards. Is it an exciting upgrade? Not really, but it's exactly the kind of quiet technical improvement you'd expect from a modern luxury sports watch. So when I first heard that Longines was redesigning the HydroConquest, I'll be honest, I was a little bit worried. This has been my favorite sports watch for years, and thankfully Longines didn't try to reinvent it. Instead, they refined almost everything owners had been asking for. The bezel is better, the bracelet is dramatically better, the clasp is excellent, the finishing is more premium, the movement gets a useful technical upgrade, and now you have plenty of options to choose from, different colors, the classic H-link bracelet, the elegant Milanese bracelet, and multiple case sizes. Pricing also makes a lot of sense. You can still find the old HydroConquest for around $1,600. The previous ceramic version sits around $2,000, and for roughly $2,200 you get the completely redesigned model. For me, out of the three, this is the obvious choice. Yes, I still think the older Arabic numeral dial had more personality, and yes, that's one change I probably wouldn't have made, but every other improvement is so good that if I were to buy a HydroConquest today, this is the one I'd buy. It's definitely one of those rare watches that actually lives up to all the internet hype. Longines took an already excellent sports watch, listened to years of owner feedback, and turned it into what I honestly believe is one of the best luxury dive watches you can buy anywhere near this price range. Now I'm curious, if you already own the previous HydroConquest, would you upgrade? Or do you actually prefer the older version? Let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed this comparison, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more watch content, and I'll see you in the next one.